to Akira The Don, artist, DJ, wave lord, and architect of the MEANINGWAVE universe. MEANINGWAVE, have you made your ancestors' sacrifice worthwhile today?
Concentrate every minute like a Roman, like a man, on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice, and on freeing yourself from all other distractions. Yes, you can, if you do everything as if it was the last thing you were doing in your life. And stop being aimless, stop letting your emotions override what your mind knows. Stop being hypocritical, self-centered, irritable. You see how few things you have to do to live a satisfying and reverent life? If you can manage this, that's all even the gods can ask of you. Yeah, keep on degrading yourself, so soon your chance at dignity, it will be gone. Everybody gets one life, yours is almost all used up now. And instead of treating yourself with respect, you have entrusted your own happiness unto the souls of others, unto the souls of others. Do external things distract you? Then make time to learn something worthwhile. Stop letting yourself be pulled in all directions, but make sure you guard against the other kind of confusion. People who labor all their lives but have no purpose to direct every thought and impulse toward are wasting all their time, even when hard at work. Even when hard at work, ignoring what goes on in other people's souls. No one ever came to grief that way. But if you won't keep track of what your own soul's doing, how can you not be unhappy? Don't ever forget these things, the nature of the world, my nature, how I relate unto the world, what proportion of it I make up, that you are part of nature, and no one can prevent you from speaking and acting in harmony with it. Always. Yeah, keep on degrading yourself, so soon your chance at dignity, it will be gone. Everybody gets one life, yours is almost all used up now. And instead of treating yourself with respect, you have entrusted your own happiness unto the souls of others, unto the souls of others.
Given the triumphant academic setting here, an obvious question is how much of this work of adjusting our default setting involves actual knowledge or intellect. This question gets very tricky. Probably the most dangerous thing about an academic education, at least in my own case, is that it enables my tendency to over-intellectualize stuff. To get lost in abstract arguments inside my head, instead of simply paying attention to what's going on right in front of me. Paying attention to what is going on inside me. As I'm sure you guys know by now, it is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head. Maybe happening right now. 20 years after my own graduation, I have come gradually to understand that the liberal arts cliche about teaching you how to think is actually shorthand for a much deeper, more serious idea. Learning how to think really means learning how to exercise some control over how and what you think. It means being conscious and aware enough to choose what you pay attention to and to choose how you construct meaning from experience. to think. Learning how to think. Learning how to think. Learning how to think. Because if you cannot exercise this kind of choice in adult life, you will be totally hosed. Think of the old cliche about, quote, the mind being an excellent servant but a terrible master. This, like many cliches, so lame and unexciting on the surface, actually expresses a great and terrible truth. It is not the least bit coincidental that adults who commit suicide with firearms almost always shoot themselves in the head. The head. They shoot the terrible master. And the truth is that most of these suicides are actually dead long before they pull the trigger. And I submit that this is what the real, no bullshit value of your liberal arts education is supposed to be about. How to keep from going through your comfortable, prosperous, respectable adult life dead. Unconscious. A slave to your head and to your natural default setting of being uniquely, completely, imperially alone. Day in and day out. That may sound like hyperbole or abstract nonsense. Let's get concrete. The plain fact is that you graduating seniors do not yet have any clue what day in, day out really means. Learning how to think. 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 Learning how to think.
With the things that senses experience, especially those that entice us with pleasure or frighten us with pain, or are loudly trumpeted by pride. To understand those things, how stupid, contemptible, grimy, decaying, and dead they are, that's what our intellectual powers are for.
Speed with which all of them vanish, the objects in the world and the memory of them in time, of them in time. Speed with which all of them vanish, the objects in the world and the memory of them in time, of them in time.
Understand what those people really amount to, whose opinions and voices constitute fame, and what dying is. And if you look at it in the abstract and break down your imaginary ideas of it by logical analysis, you realize that it's nothing but a process of nature, which only children can be scared of. And not just a process of nature, but a necessary one.
Which all of them vanish, the objects in the world and the memory of them in time, of them in time. Speed with which all of them vanish, the objects in the world
does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does. How man grasps God with what part of himself he does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does. How man grasps God with what part of himself he does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does. How man grasps God with what part of himself he does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does.
One of the very great things that C.G. Jung contributed to mankind's understanding was the concept of the shadow. That everybody has a shadow, and that the main task of the psychotherapist is to do what he called to integrate the evil, to, as it were, put the devil in us in its proper function. Because you see, it's always the devil, the unacknowledged one, the outcast, the scapegoat, the bastard, the bad guy. You see, the black sheep of the family. It's always from that point, what we could call the fly in the ointment, you see, that generation comes. In other words, in the same way as in the drama, to have the play, it's necessary to introduce a villain. It's necessary to introduce a certain element of trouble. So, in the whole scheme of life, there has to be the shadow. The shadow. The bastard, the bad guy, the black sheep of the family. The shadow. Integrate the evil. Integrate the evil. The shadow. The bastard, the bad guy, the black sheep of the family, the shadow. Everybody has a shadow, because without the shadow there can't be the substance. So this is why there is a very strange association between crime and all naughty things and holiness. You see, holiness is way beyond being good. Good people aren't necessarily holy people. A holy person is one who is whole, who has, as it were, reconciled his opposites. And so there's always something slightly scary about holy people. And other people react to them in very strange ways. They can't make up their minds whether they're saints or devils. So holy people have, throughout history, always created a great deal of trouble, along with their creative results. Take Jesus, for example. Trouble that Jesus created is absolutely incalculable. Think of the Crusades, the Inquisition, the heaven only knows what's gone on in the name of Jesus. Freud's a big troublemaker, as well as a great healer, you see. It all goes together. The bad guy, the black sheep of the family, the shadow. Integrate the evil. Integrate the evil, the shadow. The bastard, the bad guy, the black sheep of the family, the shadow. Everybody has a shadow, because without the shadow there can't be the substance. The holy person is scary because he is like the earthquakes, or better still, he's like the ocean. See, the ocean, on a lovely sunny day, you can say, oh, isn't that gorgeous? And you can go into it and relax and float around. But boy, when the storm comes, does that thing get mad? It's terrifying. So there is in us the ocean, you see. And Jung felt that the whole point was to bring the two together by a kind of fantastic honesty, to penetrate one's own motivations to the depths.
Akira. Not much chance. Completely cut loose from purpose. He was a young man riding a bus through North Carolina on the way to somewhere, and it began to snow. The bus stopped at a little cafe in the hills, and the passengers entered. And he sat at the counter with the others, and he ordered. The food arrived, and the meal was particularly good. And the coffee.
Think of camouflage. The chameleon who changes its color. Think of the butterfly pretending it has eyes. Think of the flower saying to the bee, "Like my honey?" Bee says, "Wow." But then that means that the bee has to be. It has to go on living, and all the trouble it takes to go around collecting honey and raising other bees and organizing itself and doing that dance which tells the other bees where there's more honey. There's all that stuff to do. But the flower was deceptive. Life is a drama, and a drama is a deception. It's a big act. When you peel an onion and you don't really understand the nature of an onion, you might look for the pit in the center, like any ordinary fruit has. But the onion doesn't have a center. It's all skins. So when you get right down, there's nothing but a bunch of skins. You say, well, that was kind of disappointing. But of course you have to understand that the skins are the part that you eat. Well, in rather the same way, see, you find when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. Well, in rather the same way, see, you find when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. That's why in Zen discipline, they give you koans which require a perfectly genuine act. An act of total and absolute sincerity. And people knock themselves out trying to do this thing. But they always know that the master's going to catch them, because he reads their thought. You know that story of von Kleist about the man who had a fight with a bear, and the bear would read his thoughts? So that the only way of hitting the bear was to do so not on purpose, because the bear would know in advance. So it's the same in working with a Zen master. You have to do the genuine act, not on purpose. But since you're put in a situation where it's rather formal, and you're supposed to do it on purpose, you're stuck, see? So you explore the onion, and you go in and in and in, and then you find, well, it's all a deception. Well, in rather the same way, see, you find when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. Well, in rather the same way, see, you find when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. That life is transient is part of its liveliness. The poets, in speaking of the transience of the world, always utter their best poetry. You know, our revels now are ended. These our actors, as I foretold you, are all spirits and are melted into air. Thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great earth itself, fie, all which it inherits will dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a wrack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made of. We are such stuff as dreams are made of. We are such stuff as dreams are made of. And our little life is rounded with a sleep. And said so well, it doesn't seem so bad after all, does it? You see, there's always in the poetry of evanescence a kind of funny nostalgia. Moralists will say, those lovely lips delight to kiss today will in a few years rot and disclose the grinning teeth of a skull. So what? The skull says, lying in the grass, chattering finch and waterfly are not merrier than I. Here among the flowers I lie, laughing everlastingly. No, I may not tell the best. Surely, friends, I could have guessed. Death was but the good king's jest. It was hid so carefully.
Do I feel happy in life? Let's see. Let's say I hope I'm finding happiness. Alright? Well, for me, if I can realize certain things in my work, I come the closest to being happy, and I can say that also about my life. So it only happens, I think, in moments. Sometimes when I'm working, and I'll be able to fulfill a scene truthfully, and then I think I'm the happiest. What I find is very stimulating to keep studying and working. But I'm not just generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. I'm not just generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. I'm not just generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. I don't know. Sometimes. I don't know. I think sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Which is natural, I guess, for everyone. I would like to be more sociable than I am. On some days. Sometimes I chat when I'm not pleased, but sometimes the work itself requires more, that I'm quiet and to myself more. And other days, like doing a musical number, I try not to get too, I like to be more outgoing, because that's what I have to express, and so I try to keep it general. I try. Even if I feel like it or not, I try to make the effort to make contact with people around me. Yes, because I could easily be alone. It doesn't bother me to be alone. Some people I know, they don't like to be alone. I don't mind it. I need it as a rest, and yeah, it kind of refreshes myself. Yeah. And a rest. I'm not just generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I think I'm generally miserable. I'm not just generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I think I'm generally miserable. I think there's two things in human beings that they, as I think there is in myself, that they want to be alone, but they also want to be together, you know? Because I think I have also a gay side to me, also a sad side. And I think that's the way with people also. So there is something in people, they need solitude for a while.
It is an amazing thing in our culture. Everybody is afflicted with ontological guilt. For example, if a policeman comes to the door, everybody is instantly frightened. You wonder, what on earth have I done? And there are certain clergy who are absolute experts in making you feel guilty. They are really marvelous. And there are clergy of all kinds, for all classes, and for all levels of intelligence. And they can make you feel real guilty. Only you have to watch always what games people are playing. You have to watch always what games people are playing. You have to watch always what games people are playing. You have to watch always what games people are playing. Now you see, the thing is that really is a puzzle. They don't admit they're playing games. And when a person is playing games and doesn't admit that they're playing games, then you have some kind of a trickster who isn't really being fair to you. Now, of course, the game, that this game is not a game, has a certain kind of a fascinating quality to it. How mixed up can we all get? Let's try. How mixed up can we all get? Let's try. See? There's a certain possibility in that. I would like to go insane and be as insane as anybody has ever been and be the farthest out crazy nut in the world. See? That's a game. But it's not a good game. It's a game being played by a person who didn't really understand that everyday life was a game too. And I think the most important thing is to admit this. Only you have to watch always what games people are playing. You have to watch always what games people are playing. You have to watch always what games people are playing. You have to watch always what games people are playing. 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 Games people are playing.
One way of conceptualizing yourself is that you're one speck of dust among 7 billion, and when you conceptualize yourself that way, you might think, well, what difference does it make what I say or do? And that's actually quite convenient for you, because if it doesn't matter what you say or do, then you don't have any responsibility and you can do whatever you want. The price you pay for that is a bit of nihilism, but if you don't have to shoulder any responsibility, that's a small price to pay. The other way of looking at it, and this is actually the accurate way of looking at it, is that you're in a network. You're a node in a network. You can do a little bit of arithmetic very rapidly and just figure out how powerful you are. You know 1,000 people. You know 1,000 people. They know 1,000 people. They know 1,000 people. That means that you're one person away from 1 million people and 2 persons away from 1 billion people. And you're the center of that network. And now the way networks work is that information propagates in a network manner. So don't underestimate the power of your speech. Don't underestimate the power of truth. There's nothing more powerful. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Now, in order to speak what you might regard as the truth, you have to let go of the outcome. You have to think, I'm going to say what I think, stupid as I am, biased as I am, ignorant as I am. I'm going to state what I think as clearly as I can, and I'm going to live with the consequences no matter what they are. Now, the reason you think that, that's an element of faith. The idea is that nothing brings a better world into being than the stated truth. Now, you might have to pay a price for that, but that's fine. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. So if you're going to stand up for something, stand up for your truth. It'll shape you because people will respond and object and tell you why you're a fool and a biased moron, why you're ignorant. And then if you listen to them, you'll be just that much less like that the next time you say something. And if you do that for 5 years, you'll be so damn tough and articulate and able to communicate and withstand pressure that you won't even recognize yourself. And then you'll be a force to contend with. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. It's almost impossible to provide people with enough protection so that they feel safe to speak. Okay, so we'll address that directly. It is not safe to speak, and it never will be. The thing you gotta keep in mind is that it's even less safe not to speak, right? It's a balance of risk. You wanna pay the price for being who you are, for stating your mode of being in the world, or do you wanna pay the price for being a bloody serf, a one that's enslaved him or herself? Well, that's a major price, man. That thing unfolds over decades, and you'll just be a miserable worm at the end of about 20 years of that. No self-respect, no power, no ability to voice your opinions, nothing left but resentment because everyone's against you. It's like, say what you think carefully. Pay attention to your words. Say what you think carefully. Pay attention to your words. It's a price you want to pay if you are willing to believe that truth is the cornerstone of society. In the most real sense. If you're willing to take that leap, then tell the truth and see what happens. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Nothing better could possibly happen to you. There'll be ups and downs, and there'll be pushback, and there'll anything from it. It's like, wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
Instructive to go to a professional professor's meeting. In my field, which is philosophy, you go to a congress of philosophers, and you'll find when they all get together in the bar or in the restaurant in somebody's room, the one thing they don't talk about is philosophy. It is very bad form indeed to show interest in philosophy among your colleagues. The same is exactly true in clergy gatherings. They don't talk about religion. What they both talk about is politics. Church politics and academic politics. Because it's bad form to be brilliant on a faculty. Because it outclasses your colleagues. Therefore, faculty people tend to cultivate the studied mediocrity. Mediocrity. And you've got to watch out for that. I mean, if you get mobs of students coming to your lectures, you get pretty black looks from your colleagues. But you see what it is. It's scholarship about scholarship, not scholarship. Just as learning, because learning is good for you, is irrelevant to learning. The whole idea of improving yourself by learning is irrelevant to the learning process. And in the same way, doing business is doing business. Doing business, such as manufacturing clothes, is a very good thing to do. I could conceive that it would be extremely enjoyable, something one could be very proud of, to make good clothes. Of course you need to sell them because you need to eat. But to make clothes to make money raises another question. Because then your interest is not in making clothes, it's in making money, and then you're going to cheat on the clothes. And then you get an awful lot of money and you don't know what to do with it. The study mediocrity. The study mediocrity.
This, I submit, is the freedom of real education, of learning how to be well-adjusted. You get to consciously decide
what has meaning and what doesn't. What has meaning and what doesn't. What has meaning? What has meaning
worship. Because here's something else that's weird but true. In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there is actually no such thing as atheism. There is no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And a compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship, be it JC or Allah, be it Yahweh or the Wiccan mother goddess, or the Four Noble Truths or some inviolable set of ethical principles, is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough. Never feel you have enough. It's the truth. Worship your own body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally plant you. On one level, we all know this stuff already. It's been codified as myths, proverbs, cliches, epigrams, parables. The skeleton of every great story. What has meaning and what doesn't. What has meaning and what doesn't. You get to consciously decide what has meaning, what has meaning, what has meaning, what has meaning. What has meaning? What has meaning? What has meaning? What has meaning? The whole trick is keeping the truth up front in daily consciousness. Worship power, you will end up feeling weak and afraid. And you will need ever more power over others to numb you to your own fear. Worship your intellect, being seen as smart, you will end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the verge of being found out. Look, the insidious thing about these forms of worship is not that they're evil or sinful, it is that they are unconscious. They are default settings. They're the kind of worship you just gradually slip into. Day after day, getting more and more selective about what you see and how you measure value without ever being fully aware that that's what you're doing. The so-called real world will not discourage you from operating on your default settings, because the so-called real world of men and money and power comes merrily along on the fuel of fear and anger and frustration and craving and the worship of self. Our own present culture has harnessed these forces in ways that have yielded extraordinary wealth and comfort and personal freedom. The freedom all to be lords of our own tiny skull-sized kingdoms, alone at the center of all creation. This kind of freedom has much to recommend it. But of course there are all different kinds of freedom, and the kind that is most precious you will not hear much talked about much in the great outside world of wanting and achieving and displaying. The really important kind of freedom involves attention and awareness and discipline, and being able truly to care about other people and to sacrifice for them over and over in myriad petty little unsexy ways every day. That is real freedom. That is being educated and understanding how to think. The alternative is unconsciousness, the default setting, the rat race. The constant gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. I know that this stuff probably doesn't sound fun and breezy or grandly inspirational the way a commencement speech is supposed to sound. What it is, as far as I can see, is the capital T truth with a whole lot of rhetorical niceties stripped away. You are, of course, free to think of it whatever you wish. But please don't just dismiss it as some finger-wagging Dr. Laura sermon. None of this stuff is really about morality or religion or dogma or big fancy questions of life after death. The capital T truth is about life before death. It is about the real value of a real education, which has almost nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with simple awareness. Awareness of what is so real and essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us all the time, that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, this is water. 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 This is water.
It is unimaginably hard to do this. To stay conscious and alive in the adult world, day in and day out. Which means yet another grand cliche turns out to be true. Your education really is the job of a lifetime. And it commences now.
What has meaning and what doesn't? What has meaning and what doesn't?
You get to consciously decide
what has meaning. What has meaning? 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 What has meaning?
I wish way more than love. I wish way more than love. I wish way more than love. I wish way more than love.
Jung, I want to read a passage from one of his lectures, which I think is one of the greatest things he ever wrote, and which has been a very marvelous thing for me. People forget that even doctors have moral scruples, and that certain patients' confessions are hard even for a doctor to swallow. Yet the patient does not feel himself accepted, unless the very worst of him is accepted too. Unless the very worst of him is accepted too. Yet the patient does not feel himself accepted, unless the very worst of him is accepted too. No one can bring this about by mere words. It comes only through reflection, and through the doctor's attitude towards himself and his own dark side. If the doctor wants to guide another, or even accompany him a step of the way, he must feel with that person's psyche when he passes judgment. Unless the very worst of him is accepted too. Unless the very worst of him is accepted too. Yet the patient does not feel himself accepted, unless the very worst of him is accepted too. Whether he puts his judgments into words or keeps them to himself makes not the slightest difference. To take the opposite position and to agree with the patient offhand is also of no use. Feeling comes only through unprejudiced objectivity. This sounds almost like a scientific precept, and it could be confused with a purely intellectual, abstract attitude of mind. But what I mean is something quite different. It is a human quality, a kind kind of deep respect for the facts, for the man who suffers from them, and for the riddle of such a man's life. The truly religious person has this attitude. He knows that God has brought all sorts of strange and inconceivable things to pass, and seeks in the most curious ways to enter a man's heart. He therefore senses in everything the unseen presence of the divine will, unless the very worst in him is accepted too. Unless the very worst in him is accepted too. Yet the patient does not feel himself accepted, unless the very worst in him is accepted too. Unless the very worst in him is accepted too. Unless the very worst in him is accepted too. Yet the patient does not feel himself accepted, unless the very worst in him is accepted too. This is what I mean by unprejudiced objectivity. It is a moral achievement on the part of the doctor, who ought not to let himself be repelled by sickness and corruption.
Now you may say, I need some help in this process, and therefore I am going to find someone else to help me. It may be a therapist. It may be a clergyman. It may be a guru. It may be any kind of person who teaches a technique of self-improvement. Now, how will you know whether this person is able to teach you? How can you judge, for example, whether a psychotherapist is effective or just a charlatan? How can you judge whether a guru is himself spiritually wise or merely a good chatterbox? Well, of course, you ask your friends, you ask his other students or patients, and they're all, of course, enthusiastic. You have to be enthusiastic when you bought something expensive. If you bought an automobile which turned out to be a lemon, it's very difficult to admit that it was a lemon and that you were fooled. And it's the same when you buy a religion or an expensive operation. But what people do not sufficiently realize is that when you pick an authority, whether it's a psychotherapeutic one or a religious one, you chose it. You chose it. You chose it. You chose it. In other words, that this fellow or this book or this system is the right one is your opinion. And how are you competent to judge? After all, if you're saying to this other person or other source, I think you are the authority, that's your opinion. So you cannot really judge whether an authority is a sound authority unless you yourself are a sound authority. Otherwise, you may just be being fooled. You may say, for example, I believe that the Bible is the Word of God. All right, that's your opinion. I know the Bible says it's the Word of God, but it's your opinion that the Bible is not lying. The church says the Bible is the Word of God, but it's your opinion that the church is right. You cannot escape from that situation. It's your opinion. You chose it. You chose it. You chose it. You chose it.
MEANINGWAVE.com. Because happiness is a side effect of meaning.